Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to my Great Guitar Build Off 2022 build. In today's video, I'm partway through it here, we're doing the polishing work, we're doing the assembly, we're getting this guitar ready to go so that it can go up for auction. Check it out at greatguitarbuildoff.com. There may even be another site. I'll put a link in the description below so you can check it out. This year, there are a ton of participants in this invitational challenge. We're raising a whole bunch of money for various good causes and charities, among other things. The Great Guitar Build Off itself, which helps people get into guitar building. I'm supporting the Stollery Children's Hospital, which I think is a very important cause, one that's near and dear to my heart. And yeah, it's gonna be good. And we're doing a raffle, so you can buy tickets for as many of the guitars as you want, anything that interests you, and I hope you will, to support all the good causes out there. Now, in this video, we're going to do the assembly on this thing. We are unfortunately not going to get the opportunity to test the guitar in this video for a number of reasons, not the least of which is I do my assembly work in this unheated garage, and I live in Canada, and while we've had a minus 40-degree cold snap here that is just kind of coming to a close, and I wasn't comfortable bringing the guitar out into the garage to work on it in those temperatures because it's a lacquer finish. It's a beautiful nitrocellulose lacquer finish from Oxford, which is a great product. Oxford Supply, link in the description. Great product, but nitrocellulose lacquer is susceptible to cracking if it changes temperature dramatically because it shrinks. So yeah, couldn't do it. Had to keep it stored inside. Couldn't really make this video, and now I have, I have today. And by today, I mean tonight, because I just got home from work, to finish assembling this and make this video. And by the time I finish, it will probably be, because of the time that I get home from work, it will probably be well into the night and my wife will be sleeping. So I'm not going to go try and demo the thing. But anyway, you'll get a good look at it. If you've been following my channel for a while, including last year's Great Guitar Build Off, you've heard what rail hammer pickups sound like. That's what I'm going to be using in this one, some awesome rail hammer humbuckers. So you'll have a good concept of that. And then I've got a really nice custom wiring harness from Gun Street Wiring Shop. So we'll have some cool sounds to play with. But what I'm saying is, you know it's going to sound good. So without further ado, because it is late and I got to get it in gear, so to speak, let's get to it. Let's get this guy assembled, and you can see what it looks like when it's finished. I'm excited to show you guys the guards and stuff. Let's get after it. So we are getting into the polishing process here, which necessitates us getting our finish flat and smooth. We're going to do that, of course, by sanding it. There's really no other way that I'm aware of, so I'm using some 1500 grit paper here. I've got a 5-inch pad on my sander, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is more the grit and the technique. You'll see I'm kind of sitting the sander on there very flat. I'm being careful. I'm actually using it on a fairly slow setting for this. I don't want to burn through, particularly because it's lacquer. If it were a harder finish like a polyurethane and automotive clear coat, then I might reconsider the speed. But generally speaking, there's no reason to go fast. I mean, you shouldn't be rushing through this. It's not the kind of thing that gets done quickly. It takes some time, but that's important. It's a finesse thing. So we're starting with some 1500 grit, and we're going to move our way up from there. And you can see I'm wiping off the junk with my hand there, the dust, because your hand picks up dust really well, and it's a good way to get rid of it. The cloth works, of course, easily as good, if not better, though. Anyway, I'm sanding this flat. I have had, this takes a few steps. You want to go in gently, carefully, slowly, and just get rid of any orange peel, any texture, and you can identify that by wiping off the dust and seeing if there are any smooth spots, because smooth spots are low spots and you want to sand those out. But don't overdo it near the edges, because edges are very easy to sand through. So that's what I'm doing there. I have had, as I was about to say, some discussions. My viewers know, generally speaking, that you have to go through this process if you want a perfectly flat and smooth finish. And if you're 100% happy with how your spray goes on, then don't bother. If you don't want to improve it, if you don't think it's necessary, if you don't want to risk it, then that's fine if you like the way it looks. But I want kind of a glassy smooth finish, so I'm going to go in with the sander and then polish. But I have had a few people who obviously aren't regular viewers of mine tell me that this makes no sense. There's no reason for them to sand. If they've got a reasonable finish, sanding will ruin it. They're just going to go straight to the polish. And This really isn't the time for me to get into it, but I'll just say that doesn't work because there's nothing really to flatten it. Polish and compound do have some abrasive in them. That is how they function, but not enough to flatten anything out. So you really do need to go in and flatten out your finish, and there is some debate about what grit or grits are appropriate for that, and it does depend on how textured your finish is, but it's a necessary part of the process. So I've gone in based on how my finish looks, and I've done a sanding at 1500 grit, and now I'm doing a quick hand sanding linearly at 2000 grit. And by linearly, I just mean like it's not on the orbital. I'm just doing it kind of in straight lines. And then I'm going to do the same with 4000 grit, gently, not very much. I don't want to go any deeper than I need to into this finish. And frankly, the spray went on very smooth, so there's really no need. The reason I'm going that high is because of the way that I'm polishing. I'm going to 4000 grit, and I'm just going to be using the same DA sander essentially, but on a higher speed setting to do my polishing work, which works just fine. But if I had a large kind of pedestal mounted buffer and compounds, frankly, I do kind of have that. But if I were planning on using that, then I might stick with the 1500 or the 2000 because the extra sanding wouldn't really accomplish anything. And extra sanding for the sake of extra sanding, when it comes to a finish, just creates extra risk. So there would be no point in that context. But because of the way I'm polishing, this is going to mean less polishing, less messing around. It's going to make things faster. So I'm starting with the Oxford medium compound. I don't want to spend a ton of time polishing if I can avoid it, because I don't want to increase the risk of me burning through the finish with the polish. Probably not going to happen when you're using a pad like this. This is a foam pad. But if I was starting up with a wool pad and a bigger polisher, for example, then it's a genuine risk that you will burn the finish, melt the finish, go through it, that kind of thing. So that's obviously something that we want to avoid. None of that sounds good. I think we can probably all agree on that. So I'm going in, I've cranked this thing up. It was at low speed when I was doing my sanding, or relatively low speed. Now it is at high speed, at least for this piece of equipment. This is a Dynabrade random orbital sander. I've got a couple in the link in the description. That is the Amazon link. I also have the pads in the Amazon link in the description, and I've got the Oxford supply link in the description if you want the polish or the paint. Basically everything I use for the finish here. So I've done that. Now I'm going in with a lint-free rag. A lint-free rag, people ask me occasionally what they can use for that. There's no magic to it. It just needs to be a soft cloth. The t-shirt that I'm wearing in this video, if I pass that through the washing machine, I've had it for long enough, there's no lint left to it, that would work just fine. The actual rag that I'm using is probably a chunk of old t-shirt. It can be old t-shirt, it can be old shorts, it doesn't really matter. You want something like a soft cotton, for example, and something that's made its way through your wash cycle in your dryer a couple times so that it gets rid of all the lint and doesn't leave residue. That's really about all there is to that. So I do a couple passes here with the Oxford Supply medium compound. I'm using my Chemical Brothers hex pattern pad on a Dynabrade sander, and this set of pads that I got comes with several of different stiffnesses essentially, which is kind of like different grits when it comes to polishing. So I'm starting with this, I'm starting with the medium compound, and then I'm going to make my way up to the fine polish, and I'm going to use a softer / finer pad, and that's going to be how I deal with that, how I get my kind of perfect shine, so to speak. This will give you a very passable gloss, and especially on light colors like white, silver, etc., nobody's really going to be able to tell the difference. But when you get into the darker colors, then it really matters. So blue's not too bad, this blue's not too bad, but if I were working with a black, for example, then you risk having a whole bunch of swirl marks, haze, etc. It's very difficult to get a perfect black finish. And so that's where the finer polish, which I'm now putting on, is important, and that's where the finer pad, which I'm now using, is also important. And on this guitar, I've got black edges, so I got to be careful. I'm trying to avoid doing a lot of messing around with the edges. I'm only fixing a couple of minor blemishes on them, because the edges usually, at least the way that I spray, come out very nice, so it's not a big deal. But they can be a little tenuous, so you do have to be careful. And black in particular is a difficult color to work with. So we're almost through our polishing process here. In fact, on the front, we are through it. The further along you go with the finer polishes and stuff, the less time it takes and the fewer passes you need to make, basically. So that's with one pass at this polish level and with this finer thing. I haven't done a pass on the back yet at the time of me flipping the guitar around here, but I end up doing one after. And I determined that that's all right. That looks good. I'm happy with it. It is basically mirror smooth. So we're moving on. We're back to my garage now. This is, well, just before the cold snap. I get the opportunity to spend a few minutes putting the finish on the neck. The neck is getting just a simple coat of Odie's oil. And by a simple coat, I mean like 4 of them. But anyway, it's getting some Odie's oil. You can see it darkening the neck. You can see it creating a nice satiny sheen on there. The thing I like about this, and it's not the only product that does it, but it's a good option, is it creates this very, very fast feeling finish. I don't like heavy gloss finishes on my neck. If you've been watching me for a while, you know that. I like these faster satin finishes. So that's what the Odie's oil gives you. If you are looking for that, it's available through the Solo Music Gear link in the description, which is an affiliate link. Feel free to pick it up through there. Now I'm doing my shielding on the inside of the cavity. And yeah, there's not a whole lot to tell you here. I've got some copper tape. Pretty easy to come by. I had a heck of a time finding copper tape when I was first starting this, but this hobby, if you will, but it's gotten a lot easier. So I've got some copper tape, and I'm using actually a little hobby knife basically to burnish it down, cut when necessary, which is rare, but I'm just using the back of it to burnish the tape into place so that it's nice and smooth and stuck on there really well. And that's really all you need. I mean, it doesn't need to look a particular way. It's within the guitar, so it's nice if it's aesthetically pleasing, but it's also far from critical. The idea is simply that you're creating a Faraday cage, a conductive kind of cage around the electronics. And you can't do it around the whole thing, but you can do it around this particular piece, the control cavity. And so that's what we're going for here. I'm going to do a coating of it on the control cover, and I've got most of the interior of that cavity coated, and that's going to give us the shielding that we want. And luckily we're using humbuckers, so really, even if I didn't do that, it really wouldn't be that big a deal. Now, at this point, it's tough to tell from the video, but it's about 40 to 45 minutes after I put that Odie's oil on, so I'm using kind of a rougher rag to buff it off. That's what you do. And I'm applying it on the other side. So again, I end up doing a few coats like that. I end up doing 2 coats on the fretboard and 4, I think, on everything else. They're very, very thin. 4 is excessive. You could get away with 1, honestly, on everything. You could certainly get away with 2, but I end up doing 4. I didn't move the camera this time, but 45 minutes later, I come back with that rag, and here's what I end up with. You can see the fretboard. This is 2 very light coats of Odie's oil, and that's it. Nice satiny sheen, very fast, very smooth, pretty, in my opinion. Anyway, so I get that done. Now I'm going to install the neck, or make sure that everything fits for the installation of the neck at least. I'm using 1/4-inch bolts. They're pretty big, and threaded inserts. So no concerns about this neck going anywhere, to say the least. But I did get a little bit of paint, despite the way I have my stuff set up. A little bit of paint on the inside of the neck pocket. So now I can't get the neck into the neck pocket, which is fine. You know, you go in, you do a little cleanup work along the edges. My spray jig does cover the bottom of the neck pocket, but it does occasionally allow a little bit of paint to get on the sides. The way that I deal with that is simply with a very, very sharp chisel. If you've been following me, you know I've got Hosco chisels from Solo Music Gear that I use. Again, link in the description if you want. They're hollow backed, very, very sharp when they come, and easy to sharpen. In fact, all of the stones that I use to sharpen them are also from Solo Music Gear. Foolishly, I forgot to drill my hole to put the ground wire through. So I'm doing that with the finish on. I would very much have preferred to do that pre-finish, but here we are. Silly of me. Anyway, so I'm drilling the hole to put the ground wire through so that it can contact the bottom of the bridge. I do that in this particular case. I mean, you can drill straight through to the control cavity if you're able to get the angle, but that's a lot easier when you don't have a finish on. In this case, I was worried about marring the finish, so I went with option 2, which works just as well. It's very common for like Telecasters and stuff. That is running that wire into the pickup cavity and then through the normal hole for the pickup cavity into the control cavity. So I've done that. I've stripped the end of the wire. I've bent it over so that it's going to end up under the bridge, not going to make a mess. It's easily covered by the bridge. Of course, I checked that before drilling it. And now it's time for me to go ahead and get that bridge in place because, hey, why not? So the bridge is in place here and I've checked the alignment of it. Unlike drilling that ground wire hole, this is something I did remember to do before I painted the guitar. It looks good to me, so I'm going to go ahead and get it bolted in place. And, there's not a whole heck of a lot to it. I made sure that the lines for the ferrules, for the holes through the body lined up, and that the lines for the the holes for the screws lined up. And that's it. It's centered on the neck. All is well. So now that ground wire is clamped in place, and that is important, I'm going to feed it through into the pickup cavity, and then I'm going to feed through my pickup wires. These are 4 conductor, actually 5 with the ground wire, and this is your first look at the pickguard situation on this guy. There's pickguard number 1. I'm getting that bolted in place. I took the neck off just to make it easier. I've got a couple of awesome hum cutters. Sorry, I think I said earlier that they were humbuckers, but these are hum cutters from Railhammer. The hum cutters are the size of humbuckers. You can see this really cool design with the rail on one side and the poles on the other, and they are designed to sound more along the lines of a P90. So I've got hum cutters in this thing. Not only do I find them aesthetically awesome, but they also sound great. And you'll know that if you've watched my ES335 video. That kit that I built, they sounded awesome, notwithstanding that it was me playing. So getting those in place, and then the second and final portion of my pickguard. I did have a third section for under the bridge that I had in mind, but it was too much. I like the way that this looks. I love the way that the finish looks on this guitar and the grain accenting, and I didn't want to cover the entire top of the thing in metal and make it seem like a suit of medieval armor, so this is what we ended up with. Now I'm opening up the Gun Street Wiring Shop wiring harness. Comes with a beautiful little diagram to tell me where everything goes, which I desperately need because if you look at this thing's complicated. Like, to me, that just looks like a plate of spaghetti a little bit, but I know it's very well organized. You can tell it's quality. We've got the different color wires in there, and frankly, again, it doesn't just look complicated. This is complicated. I have a mini switch in here. I have 2 push-pull knobs. I have a rotary switch. Frankly, I wish I knew what all of this did, but I don't because my friend over at Gun Street Wiring Shop figured it out for me. I just sent him kind of the dimensions of the cavity and said, what do you figure? What can you do for me? Come up with something. And he made me this unreal wiring harness that I'm really excited to try out. Again, rotary switch, 2 push-pull knobs. We've got the mini switch. Hopefully I can get this all figured out, but it looks awesome and I'm really excited to play with it. And big thank you to Gun Street Wiring Shop. Check them out 100%. They are awesome. Not only do they do really cool stuff, but they do really cool custom stuff. It's flexible. You can fit it into whatever guitar you need to. And you can even change, modify, add whatever you need to do, really, which, a lot of these wiring harnesses are like that, but some certainly aren't. So I'm playing a fun little game here where I try and get this to fit because I have both the cavity and the holes in the wood, as well as the custom aluminum pickguard that I designed for it that does line up, actually. Lines up really, really well, which I was very happy with. However, it adds some thickness, and the top of this wood is already pretty thick. And when I went and double checked it with just the guitar, it didn't account for the thickness of the pickguard, and I tried to eyeball it, and here we are. A little bit of messing around needed, but that's fine. It's going to work just fine. It's going to look good. I got it all sorted out, so no worries on that front. I'm not going to show you all of the wiring for a couple reasons here. One, it's boring to watch. Two, I'm not very good at it. That's a couple of reasons, so we'll leave it at that. But, I'll get this output jack wired up here. I'm going to play around a little bit, making sure that the wires look good. I go to put them into this thing, to my helping hand, to tin them. It turns out they're already tinned. So great job again, Guns Rewiring Shop, much appreciated. So it ends up being a pretty straightforward thing for me to go ahead and get those wired into the output jack, and then we'll go ahead and get them installed. So just a few quick tips here, because again, I'm by no means the leading authority on this. When you are doing this, make sure you tin the holes there, you tin the leads. You can see, or if you go back, you'll be able to see there are no wide open holes there for me to put stuff through when I did this, because I tinned them. And tin the ends of your wires, and tin your soldering iron, because if you don't, it won't heat properly. It won't heat the subject matter that you're trying to solder. So get some solder on there. It helps. I'm throwing some knobs on here now. I'm going to go ahead and get those in place and get them tightened up. And I'm distinguishing between the push-pull knobs and the rotary switch by using slightly rounded top knobs for the push-pull knobs and a flat top knob for the rotary switch, which is a subtle difference, but I think enough to make it clear which one you're dealing with. Now I'm jumping around here because there are a couple things that didn't get filmed, but they're not a big deal. Putting the finishing touches on the nut, making sure that that's in place. It's a little wide, so I ended up having to sand a little bit off the front and back, but it's good to go now. Looks good, slotted. It's the right height, which is the most important part. And now I'm installing the tuners. These are the ones, actually the locking tuners that Crimson Guitars sent to me, I believe, so nothing wrong with those. They look good. I like to, this is a little OCD of me maybe, but I like to put the tuning pegs vertical like that. You can see on the side, and look straight down and make sure that everything is square. I find that to be the easiest way to do it. So that's what I'm doing. I do that pretty much with every guitar that I build or work on these days to make sure that everything's square. And then I'm just going in with a little socket and tightening up my tuners, and I'll go in from the back before. You guys have seen me do it many times, so I don't end up filming it this time because I was kind of on and off. It was a frequently interrupted install, let's put it that way. But anyway, I go in from the back, drill my little pilot holes, and get the screws installed to make sure that these stay square, which frankly isn't necessary. I mean, it's nice, it keeps everything in place, but it's really not a big deal. So anyway, so I did that on this one. You guys have seen me do it before. There are lots of videos about it. Now I'm installing string rollers. Usually I do a laser burned nameplate on my guitars, but this year I didn't. This year I did a few things differently. I opted for a more classic shape. I opted not to use the personalized nameplate. I opted for a full gloss finish for a change. So a few things differently this year. Hopefully you guys like them, although I also hope you like the nameplates. But anyway, that's it. That's the build. It's done. I think it looks pretty good. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think, but I know the color has been a relatively popular choice. I haven't shown basically anybody the guards yet, except for my Patreon supporters, and a big shout out to them. I appreciate all your help, guys, all your support. Thank you for all that you do for me. So now you guys get to see the guards, and now you get to see them on the guitar. So let me know what you think. Pretty happy with those. I have had the opportunity to play around without the amp silently and test the comfort cars on this thing, and they are, in my opinion, unreal. Very good. I much prefer this type of arm carve to any other that I've dealt with except for the full arm cutaway that I have on my other GGBO builds. So those are the two kinds that I'll be using in future for my builds. So as I run out of time on this video, guys, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to subscribe, and please remember to participate in the raffle at the GGBO. Thanks for everything. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Have a good one.